Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo!
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. Today we are talking about fat loss. However, we're going to be talking about it in a very different way than you probably have ever heard it talked about before, because in the world of diet culture and then anti-diet culture, it's either you can try to pursue fat loss or you're not pursuing fat loss, because if you are, that means that you're, cling to diet culture and their beliefs. And I think we're smarter than that. I think we are able to understand where our desires are coming from. I think we're able to dissect it and change our beliefs. And I believe that if you want to pursue fat loss, that's totally fine for you. Now, if you've listened to my podcast for a while, or if you know me or followed my content for a while, then you know that I do fall on the further, closer to that anti-diet side. So what I mean by that is, if you want to pursue fat loss, that's fine. However, if the method you're doing and the way you're going about it is temporary and it's stressing you out more than helping you out, well, then we need to throw it out. And that's not actually what I want for you. And I also always love to come from the side of, let's focus on just getting stronger. Maybe if leaner is something that you want to do, really ask yourself, why is it that you want to pursue that? But really, overall, I hope that you're achieving, instead of even calling it fat loss, I rather call it muscle gain, right? I rather call it building strength. I rather call it, taking care of you, because for some of you, there might be excess body fat that maybe is not helping you. Maybe you're struggling with things like diabetes or hypertension, high cholesterol, stuff like that. Sometimes high cholesterol is hereditary, but for others, it could be changed through dietary lifestyle factors. And in general, it's your body and you get to do what you want to do with it, right? I believe in body autonomy. I just make sure that when I say that, you understand that we live in a society and we live in a world that makes us think we need to be smaller in order to be worthy of love and acceptance, and somehow being smaller makes us happier. So I just want you to know that is not true at all. However, if you decide to kind of go about this journey as a way of just, maybe you haven't been taking care of your body, maybe you haven't been taking care of yourself, or maybe you've been trying really, 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 really hard, but you're not seeing or feeling any results. And I think that when we come at it from this angle of, let me just be a better version of me, let me be a more balanced version of me, let me focus on getting stronger, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, then fat loss can potentially be a byproduct. But if you just try to get healthy, you might get really healthy, but if you don't have a fat loss focus, you might necessarily lose body fat. And here's what I mean by that. Your body can be healthy without having, a certain percentage of body fat on it, believe it or not. It's very possible for you to go to the doctor and they tell you your blood is normal, you don't have diabetes, you don't have hypertension, you don't have high cholesterol, because maybe you live an active lifestyle and maybe you eat relatively balanced, and your body has, and you have good genetics. There's lots of reasons why that could be the case. Now, it's possible that you can be healthy that way. And then you could also be healthy with less body fat as well. And it really doesn't, I just want to make sure that you guys understand, maybe in the extreme cases, like very, very, very low body fat, not super healthy, excessive amounts of excess body fat, also probably not healthy depending on the person, but often it really also factors in lifestyle change. So that's why I'm like really hesitant, and I really rarely ever say that. But I usually say that's where I don't really believe in the like using the body mass index, the BMI. I mean, not for nothing, it's just a stupid calculation that literally doesn't factor in anything, not even gender, which our bodies, men and female bodies naturally are just made up differently. Men have more muscle on their bodies, so their metabolisms are faster. There's so many factors in that. But women need extra body fat because they need to carry a baby. So like, there's just, I don't want to go on a tangent. But all that to say, using BMI really is not helpful at all. I don't think using numbers or metrics is very helpful often. It can be useful, but it's not like the end all. It's not the tell all. But I usually say that like with BMI, it's really only helpful in the extreme cases. Even then, it doesn't tell the whole story. But with the extreme cases, I mean, do we really need to know the BMI to tell ours, like, to know that, like, this person might need extra support and extra help, right? Should we use that to place us in a category and judge us, or should we use it as a place for an area of compassion and just check in and be like, what's going on with this person? Nothing to do with their character, by the way. Like, there's actual medical conditions that can make somebody really, 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 really thin and really, 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 really large. So it really depends on the situation, but I digress. I wonder if there's ever going to be a podcast episode where it's a solo episode where I don't digress. That would be really interesting. Honestly, the only ones that it probably would be the ones that, like, I wrote a post about it and I, like, read directly from it. But even then, I tend to go on tangents. Like today, I wrote an Instagram post about this, but you're going to get a different side and a different version, and we're going to go more in depth than what I just put, on my Instagram caption, because Instagram caption, you only allow like 2,200 characters. So, which, by the way, someone reached out to me recently. Not reach out. I went to dinner with a friend that I haven't seen in a while, and he was like, dude, your Instagram captions are so long. Like, I get halfway through and I'm like, dude, just get to the point. I'm like, well, you know what? You're not my ideal client, so don't care. So for those of you who do read all of my captions from start to finish, really appreciate you. I see you, I hear you, and I hope that you are learning from this. And I believe that those who seek will find. So keep on reading, and thank you so much. All right. Back to the lesson. All right, so we're going to talk about ways that you can focus on fat loss, try to achieve fat loss, but not get super hyper obsessed with it. Okay? Let's just get into it. All right, so basically, I want you to understand, like I just kind of like said before, that just because that's why I don't even like to use the word fat loss. It's like kind of like when we focus on what should we, foods we should take away. It's something that happens to our psychology that makes us feel deprived, and then we somehow self-sabotage or it backfires. So I really almost want you to think of it as, like, before I even get into the steps, it always starts with mindset. I really want you to think of it as a way of building strength. So let's start there, because I think where a lot of people focus on fat loss, I'm not saying it's not possible for you to achieve this in another way, but realistically, the better way, I hate to say it, there's not one way, but there is a better way to focus on fat loss, is to focus on muscle gains. And you can maintain your muscle, you can try to gain your muscle, but either way, if you just try to lose weight, let's say we cut out carbs, you go on a detox or cleanse, the pretty typical way of why none of this stuff ever works in the long run, what everybody does, is you're going to lose water weight and you're going to lose muscle mass. So you're not going to actually lose body fat. So you'll lose weight on the scale, but you won't lose body fat. Well, you might lose some of it with it, but you're going to also lose muscle and water. And water, we know, you just drink it, it comes back. And we don't want you to be dehydrated, so that's really dumb. Like, it's kind of like people who smoke cigarettes to avoid eating. It's like, not really, the best advice. But when we lose muscle mass, our muscle is what burns our calories. It burns more calories at rest than fat does. So we want muscle on our body. So we want to stay strong. So we don't want to just lose weight to lose weight. We actually want to, lose body fat and preserve our muscle as much as possible. If we can even build muscle, that would be better. Not going to go on a tangent, but there is, when I was in college, and I really should have brushed up on this before, but when I was in college and I was studying to become a dietitian, which was literally I've been a dietitian for 10 years, probably when this episode comes out, I think October something. I've been a dietitian for 10 years. Actually, this is going to come out today. Either way, 10 years I've been a dietitian. And to be a dietitian, you have to go to school for 5 years. So within those 5, I don't even know at what stage. So think about over 10 years ago, I learned a lot of this stuff. Now I stay up to date with continuing education credits and all that things, and that's why I'm saying this. So when I was in college studying to become a registered dietitian, we were taught that you build your muscle until, I want to say, around 30 years old, and then after that, you're at your peak muscle mass, and then naturally what your body will just start to decrease over time. But when you do things like strength training, what it usually will do is you can't technically grow your muscle anymore, but you can prevent it from losing muscle, because also naturally as you age, that's just a process that happens. Now, I just don't believe that to be true. I don't know. I really should be. So if you guys are a dietitian, DM me. Or if you study this stuff, DM me. I'm probably going to YouTube it, or not YouTube it, stupid. I'm going to go on, I'm going to Google it, but with my actual, I'm not just going to type it in Google. I have resources that I go to as a dietitian to make sure I'm staying up to date with the science. So I'm going to look that up in a minute. But point being is you want to build muscle. The more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism. The more muscle you have, obviously, the more you're supporting your organs and your tissues. So muscle is great. So can you lose it? Maybe. Can you prevent it from being lost? Definitely. And can you grow it? Maybe. We don't know. I think so, though. So anyways, so in order to achieve fat loss, strength training is something that you need to do. We can't just avoid it. That's what I was trying to get at before, so it took me a while to get here. But, you could lose body fat without doing any sort of strength training or exercise, but it's going to be hard to also, yes, your diet itself can preserve that muscle mass, but I don't know. Strength training is really good for our bodies. That's the thing. There's nothing. Yeah, it's kind of like water. You don't need to drink it. Some people get away with it without drinking it, but are they really doing their body the best service by not drinking any water, right? Strength training is pretty similar to that. Now, you don't need to strength train every day, and I usually even hesitate giving guidelines because I think people get stuck in the comparison and thinking oh, that's not enough or that's too much or blah, 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 because only your body can really tell you. But I would say, the standard is 2 to 3 times a week, working all different muscle groups. If you can strength train, using, doing backs and buys and all your different body parts, that's going to be really beneficial to you. Now, I think as long as, even if you were to strength train once a week and maybe you did a full body strength training workout, that's a really good place to start. And using your own body weight counts, especially in the beginning when you're starting to build your muscle mass. So you really just need to do some sort of, excuse me, it's 6:50 a.m., just FYI. I've been struggling to get podcasts out, so I'm when can I do these? I've been waking up earlier, and that's why you probably heard, I live in a multi-family house, so you probably heard people, coming down the stairs, leaving for their day. God bless them. I am starting my day, but I'm not leaving to go anywhere quite yet. Anyways, so, what are we talking about? strength training. So if you want to achieve fat loss, I highly recommend you strength train. That's why I think you should focus, instead of calling it fat loss, you should call it muscle gain. And now just promise you it's going to take time. And a lot of people are like obsessed with cardio and they think that's the answer. Because yes, fat loss, we're going to talk about this next, like calories in, calories out. Do you need to eat a calorie deficit? You do, but not in the extreme that people think. And you don't want to just like be in a calorie deficit for like the day and then you eat your calories back. It's more so you want to work on making your metabolism faster so you can pretty much eat the same and you don't have to make too many changes, but in time your body burns more calories at rest, and then that's a really great helpful way to put you in a deficit without feeling deprived, right? Like imagine not having to, cut things out. You can just kind of eat the way you've been eating, but because you're doing things like strength training, and we're going to talk about some other things that you can do, then your body just naturally burns more calories at rest, and now you are in a slight calorie deficit, so you don't feel deprived. It's something you can sustain. That's usually like a better form of a method. So strength training we have to really think about it like it's not just something that you're doing just to do it to check the box, but also because it feels really, really great to just get stronger. Like trust me when I tell you, like when you could barely lift 8-pound dumbbells or whatever, and now you could do 15 pounds or 20 pounds, like it's so cool to see what you once thought you couldn't do to what you can do. Like it's going to build your confidence. It's going to obviously build your physical strength, but it's going to build your mental strength. Obviously, and it's exercise in general is obviously really great for our mental health, but strength training just has maybe because I'm biased because it is one of my favorite types of exercise and movement. But it's really empowering. It's really, really empowering. And there's lots of benefits to it. So make sure that when you do strength train, you come at it at an angle of love, because you love your body and your body is capable. And yeah, that's a good place to start. All right, so strength training. So when I work with clients, this actually was inspired by working with a client who we'd been working on, just general improving her body image and, overall healthy living and balance. And then, she was saying that she really wanted to work on, she's been feeling heavy, which not for nothing could be emotional, but in general, she just feels heavier and she wants to feel lighter and she wants to feel strong. And so we shifted our goal a little bit to fat loss, but in a different way, because I'm a mindful eating dietitian. I'm not someone who believes in I do teach certain clients, tracking, they're counting their macros and all that stuff, but it's really rare because most of the people that come to me have a history of disordered eating and food obsession. And honestly, that just kind of perpetuates the cycle. So I really go at it from a different sort of angle and approach where they can still, pursue this goal, but without having to, be stressed out about it. Or also that's not, tracking in MyFitnessPal. Some people, maybe you're a numbers person and that's something you're doing the rest of your life. But if you're really trying to go at it as a true lifestyle change, I don't want to teach people how to just track the rest of their life. That to me is another diet. So anyways, what we were doing is we're going to talk about 5 different categories. And we basically started with 1 or 2 of them, for the next couple of weeks. She, was working on them. Now they're pretty solid. So we just added, another layer. And, the goal is by the time, she's ready to graduate, she is just making habits out of all these things, and will feel lighter. And, we don't care so much about what the number on the scale says, but, she might look different. She might feel different. Obviously feeling is the main thing we're going for. And it'll just be a byproduct. Now I will say fat loss takes time. Weight loss is easy. Fat loss is not. But the thing is that with fat loss, it's easier to keep stuff off. With weight loss, it's not. So, take your pick. Do you want short-term or long-term, right? We're stuck in a society that gets so fixated on short-term stuff. And it's just, really sad because we're always chasing the carrot rather than like really sticking to and believing in our vision and trusting that the work we put in now is going to pay off tenfold later. So once again, that's mindset stuff, but we're moving on. Okay. So strength training, super important. So I mentioned a calorie deficit. Now, once again, with my mindful eating practices, I don't even like to call it that. I don't know why. I find it like very triggering. I don't really, and there's a lot of people that I love and I follow on social media that talk about this a lot. So I'm I still, respect them and care for them, and because I feel like they're just great, coaches and how they go about things. But I just find it really not helpful, I guess, when people are just eating a calorie deficit. Because it's not that simple, number one. Number two, I feel like that's what everyone has been doing the most of their lives, is trying to eat in a calorie deficit. So I just find it very triggering. I don't know. I don't really love that method. So what I like to say is eat to feel satisfied and not stuffed. And now even that can be confusing because a lot of people are out of touch with their hunger cues. So if I say, eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, well, then most people are going to stay stuck in their pattern and skipping their breakfast because they're not hungry for it, because they overate at dinner, right? And so the cycle continues. But if you can just really focus on paying attention, just try listening to your body, right? And we can't listen to our body if we're running around all the time, if we're stressed all the time, if we're never taking a break, right? We're going to have a really hard time focusing on how we feel if we're not paying attention to it, right? So one thing that is really helpful if you're really trying to, eat a little bit less each day is having 3 balanced meals a day. And I've talked about this on other podcasts before, but a balanced meal incorporates a complex carbohydrate, a lean protein, a healthy fat, and then a fruit or vegetable. And obviously I can go into that in greater detail, but just for now, I would say just make sure that your meal incorporates multiple food groups, right? Make sure your day incorporates multiple food groups. And try to just, at least for the standard practice, those 3 balanced meals, those are going to be a really great place to start. And then if you need to fill in the gaps, fill in the gaps. But within that, if you practice things like mindful eating and you slow down to eat, you try to eat without distraction, you try to eat a little slower. Now, I know realistically doing that with every meal, especially if you live a busy, crazy lifestyle, it's not always realistic. But if you practice it, even with just your breakfast, for example, eating a balanced breakfast, starting your day with eating it slow and really taking your time and really observing it, it can be like a form of meditation. It's super healing, and it's really, really great. So give that a try. And I think by doing that, you're going to naturally start to be able to recognize, oh, that's enough, or that's too much, or, whatever it is. So that's number 2, eat to feel satisfied, not stuffed. So technically I'm addressing the calorie deficit because it is true that you need to take in less than your body burns in order to start to see a shift. It's like thermodynamics. That's literally how our bodies work. So, however, knowing the actual number of that deficit is really challenging. And there is something to be said about eating very, 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 very little. And our bodies are really, 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 really smart. And how sometimes that can usually backfire, or slow down the metabolism in extreme cases. So, yeah, be moderate with it. Don't go to the extremes. We know the extremes don't help us at all. Okay, so that brings up, like I mentioned, mindful eating. So another thing that you need to do if you want to achieve fat loss is really focus on sleep, rest, and stress management. So get quality sleep and manage your stress. That's really important because I'm sure you've heard about our hormone cortisol, or the stress hormone. And when that's being released in the body, our body is, I've said this before in other podcasts too. So our body usually operates out of 2 different states. We could either be in fight or flight, or rest and digest. When we're in fight or flight, that's our body's thinking like we're running from a bear, we're running away, right? We're super stressed. That's when our cortisol is pumping. And so when we're in that state, it's not focused on digesting our food, absorbing our nutrients, right? Like taking things in. It actually tells us things like we're not hungry, but then obviously if we stay in that too long, then we become starving, right? It's things like, it makes like our body's ability to like take in things, like certain nutrients and digest them and utilize them properly. So a lot of things happen. Like it's not, if your body never rests, then you can't possibly build that muscle, right? When we do things like strength training, it breaks our muscle down, but we need to eat and we need to rest in order to build that back up. But if we're always kind of running and we're always in a high stress state, our body is just not going to be able to function in the way that it wants to and that it's meant to, right? And then we eventually burn out and then we're not able to stay focused. And then that's the other thing too, just from like that, I just talked about like the physical side of like how beneficial like managing stress and sleep can be. But from like a psychological side, like when we're tired, we're cranky, we're not motivated, we're in a negative headspace. I mean, I know I am. Like literally that's the word cranky, that's where it came from. You know, we're just not as prone to want to like do the things we originally said we were going to do. So stop, self-sabotaging, like make yourself set yourself up for success. And that's, it's easier said than done for some of us, but getting in, focusing on at least 7 hours of sleep a night. If you could do 8, if you could do 9, that would be amazing. But it's not really so much the duration of your sleep, but your sleep quality. And if you're super stressed out, you could actually sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. But if your cortisol is still like, like super, super high, you're not going to feel well rested. So that's where things like yoga, meditation, deep breathing, just like taking a break from some screens, getting outside in nature, obviously setting boundaries. I mean, there's so many things that we can do for stress management. But life is crazy. Life is stressful. So, find your version of stress management inside of the Food Freedom Program. We talk about like your stress box toolkit. You gotta have more than one thing in there. It's important. It's really, really important. So, all right. Let's see. So we talked about eating to feel satisfied, not stuffed. We talked about strength training with love. We talked about quality of sleep and managing stress. I had mentioned fueling enough. So if we're doing things like strength training, if your body's breaking it down, but you're not eating the right foods or not eating enough, or not resting enough, then it's not going to build itself back up. So you're kind of just breaking down muscle for it to be broken down. So what do we need? Protein, lots of protein. But it doesn't have to be so much that you are drinking, egg whites out of a carton. Because I recently saw that on my social media and I was like, okay, no. And I love this person, so I'm not even going to say their name because, like I said, I follow certain accounts that, actually I really love what they do, but, then there's, components to their messaging and components to and you might know this person because we were on each other's podcast, so, but there's, just components to some of their content, which I'm sure they think the same for me, so it's fine, and I'm just sharing, this is my opinion, so it's not fact, but, I don't even know if I want to say it because if someone struggles with disordered eating, they might do this. Oh God, I'm just going to say it. To me, it's if you need to go to that to get your protein in, do you really need that much protein? We need protein, right? I would say every person it really depends on the person. So you definitely want to try to get, 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal. A high quality protein snack, that's going to be a good goal. Obviously that's a base and some people might be less or more. And, there's so many other factors, like your height, your weight, your age, your, gender, your goals, all that stuff. But that's a good place to start. But this person took oh God, I can't even, ew, like it's so gross. I'm sorry. I know that it's like what bodybuilders do, but like if you're not trying to be a bodybuilder, I just like don't think it's possible. So you know how like there's trends in the back in the day where you literally just like ate whole eggs? Yeah, don't recommend it because like, yeah, food poisoning and stuff. But ew. Anyways, he took like the carton of 100% liquid egg whites. Yeah, he poured that into a cup and then he added like sugar-free vanilla syrup, like what you would add to coffee, and he drank it raw, which is fine, but like, no. Oh God. Yeah, no. So I don't think you need to go to that extreme to get your protein in, but if that works for you, cool, I guess. I'm not judging. Am I? I'm definitely judging. No, but anyways, yeah. It's funny that people will do that, but then like for some people, they're like afraid of things like protein shakes and protein powders and protein bars, but then like they'll drink a carton of 100% liquid egg whites with sugar-free, like, what? I don't know. Anyways, point is, you need protein. Protein is the secret weapon when it comes to fat loss. It's going to build that muscle back up. It's going to preserve your muscle mass or, help you get more of it, which helps make your metabolism work faster. It also is really great with keeping hunger at bay. And it's really great, a lot of times you might be feeling a lot of cravings because maybe you're not getting in enough protein. So the leaner sources are usually best because we usually want to have our fat coming from like the plant, I don't want to say plant-based, but usually more of like a plant-based sources. So when it comes to your animal proteins, you definitely want to try the leaner sources most often. So things like chicken, fish, even like pork tenderloin is fine. Anything with the like loin at the end, like sirloin, like those are usually the leaner parts of the meat. But obviously if you see any visible fat, trim that. And that's just because that's where, fat carries more calories than carbs and protein per gram. So that's where the calories are just going to add up. So if you just trim the visible fat, then that way when you do incorporate fat, it comes from like healthier sources that are, are unsaturated rather than saturated. So things like, olive oil, avocado, nuts and seeds, stuff like that. So protein is really important. So try to have protein. And that's when we talk about 3 balanced meals a day. You're incorporating carbs, protein, fat, fruit or veggie. Like it's naturally already in there. That's why that method is so helpful. But then when it comes to like your snacks, you might want to have, a high protein snack. So something that's at least like 10 grams per serving or even like 20 grams. It obviously also depends on like how much you're strength training and all that stuff. But yeah, a lot more focusing on protein is going to be really, really helpful and beneficial for you. And then last, but certainly not least, the thing that I think people underestimate the most, which is your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, these are the calories that are burned through your everyday movement. Right? So think about it. There's 24 hours in a day. Really, you're awake for like, let's say 12 of them. And you exercise for one of those hours, which is great. And you might not even be an hour, which is totally fine. I don't work out an hour a day. It depends. But anyways, but then it's like, what are you doing with the rest of the hours? Right? So just be mindful of those things because those are the things that, believe it or not, are actually impacting your metabolism so much more than the time that you work out. So think of your exercise as like focused, intentional, things like building, muscle around your arms or your legs or your core or, what else? Just like your overall strength and well-being. And then think of NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, as the things that like you do every day that will really impact you in the long run. So for example, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, dancing in your living room, going for more walks outside, cleaning, gardening, just like try to move more and sit less. If you could walk to the coffee shop instead of drive to the coffee shop, stuff like that. it is going to make a really, really, really big difference. And it's actually what impacts your metabolism so much more from the day-to-day stuff. So those are your 5 categories of getting into fat loss without obsessing over it. Now, obviously, we also need to be mindful of, other things like alcohol or, and honestly, it comes down to like anything in excess, something that might be impacting your mood, your energy, your overall health, right? Like we don't want to negate those, but I think if you start with these 5 things, everything else will start to fall into place. So really quick recap, prioritize protein, eat to feel satisfied, not stuffed, get quality sleep and manage your stress, strength training with love, and move with NEAT. Okay, be patient and kind to yourself. Don't forget to celebrate every small victory along the way. Maybe start with 1 or 2 and build on that. If you need help or support, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me or apply to the 6 Months of Food Freedom program, which you can find at www.tipswithtony.com/coaching. And if you have any questions, message me. I'm on Instagram at tips_with_Tony with an I. And I'm happy to help you with anything you need. All right, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.